So this might surprise some people, but yes, wild jaguars are native to the state of Texas, and they occurred here until relatively recently in the past. There were documentations of jaguars in Texas throughout much of the 1800s and throughout much of the early to mid 1900s, including throughout much of the Rio Grande Valley, as far north as Del Rio, and over into the Big Bend region, including parts of South Texas in the brushlands and the Tamaulipan thorn scrub, throughout much of the coastal parts of South Texas, which includes the areas that extend up towards Houston, and even up into the Edwards Plateau area just outside of San Antonio and Austin. The furthest north sighting that's been documented in Texas occurred on the upper Brazos River in the mid 1900s. There are even documentations of jaguars that date back thousands of years and have been recorded by the indigenous people of West Texas and indigenous people throughout much of the Rio Grande Valley, including the Mogollon people in the Waco Tanks region of West Texas, where they actually painted intricate drawings of jaguars on the rocks throughout that area. And all that has been left intact, and that is an area that can be visited and explored. And you can see that evidence for yourself, which is confirmation of the occurrence of jaguars throughout parts of West Texas until relatively recently as well. Now, the last known documentation of a jaguar in Texas was in 1948, when a large 120-pound jaguar was killed just outside of Kingsville in South Texas. Okay, so just 77 years ago, there were still jaguars here in the state, which is incredible. And they were here in relative abundance. If you look at the documentations, it was not uncommon to see them throughout South Texas and over into parts of Western Texas historically. Now, is it ever possible that wild jaguars will occur again in Texas? And the answer is yes, but it depends on whether or not people will allow that to happen. There are known sightings that have been recorded on camera traps just over 100 miles away from the Texas border, in the state of Nuevo León, Mexico, in the Sierra Madre Oriental. And there is a known population of jaguars that occurs throughout parts of the state of Tamaulipas and the state of Nuevo León. And that sighting occurred relatively recently. So the question is whether or not dispersing jaguars could make their way just over 100 miles from that location across the Texas border. They would, at that point, have to cross the Rio Grande and move into the South Texas brush country. It's possible, although the likelihood that they would be shot and killed throughout much of South Texas is very high. So whether or not a population could survive is a whole other question, and it would depend on whether enough habitat was left in place and whether or not people would allow them to occur on the landscape. But they are still living in the wild in relatively close proximity to the Texas border, which means that it's possible.